The rain-slicked streets of Portland glistened under the streetlights, a mirror for the chaos in Eli's heart. He sat in the passenger seat of his boss's sleek black Audi, the hum of the engine a quiet counterpoint to the storm raging inside him. This wasn't supposed to happen, not tonight. Not ever. Eli Carter, 24, had always been careful. Growing up in a small Oregon town where whispers about people like him could ruin lives, he'd learned to keep his head down, his desires locked away. Portland was supposed to be his escape, a city where he could blend into the crowd, work his graphic design job at Pinnacle Creative, and maybe, just maybe, find himself. But now, as the car pulled up to his modest apartment building, he felt more exposed than ever. James Whitaker, his boss, sat behind the wheel, his presence commanding even in silence. At 38, James was everything Eli wasn't: polished, powerful, unapologetically himself. The creative director of Pinnacle, he wore tailored suits that clung to his broad shoulders and carried an air of confidence that made clients and employees alike hang on his every word. But it was his eyes piercing, gray, and impossibly kind that had undone Eli over the past 6 months. "You didn't have to drive me," Eli said, his voice barely above a whisper as he clutched his messenger bag. The rain had stranded him at the office, his bike useless in the downpour, and James had offered the ride without hesitation. "It's no trouble," James replied, his tone warm but measured. He glanced at Eli, and for a moment, their eyes locked. Eli's breath caught. There it was again, that unspoken thing between them, the one they'd danced around for months. It had started innocently, late nights at the office, James praising Eli's designs, their hands brushing over a sketch. Then came the coffee runs, the inside jokes, the moments when James's hand lingered too long on Eli's shoulder. Eli told himself it was nothing. James was married. He was straight. He was his boss. But the way James looked at him, like he saw every hidden part of Eli, made it impossible to believe that lie. The car idled outside Eli's apartment. Neither moved. The air felt thick, charged with words neither dared to say. "You coming in?" Eli asked, half hoping James would laugh it off, half praying he wouldn't. James's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Eli," his voice was low, almost a warning. But then he turned, and the look in his eyes wasn't caution, it was hunger. They didn't speak as they climbed the stairs to Eli's apartment. The door clicked shut behind them, and the world outside ceased to exist. James stepped closer, his breath warm against Eli's skin. "We shouldn't," he murmured, but his hand was already on Eli's waist, pulling him in. And then they broke every rule. Eli woke to the soft glow of dawn filtering through his bedroom curtains. James was gone, the sheets cold where he'd been. For a moment, Eli wondered if he'd dreamed of the way James's lips had claimed his, the way their bodies had moved together, the whispered confessions in the dark. But the ache in his chest and the faint scent of James's cologne on his pillow were real. He dragged himself to the kitchen, where a note sat on the counter. "We need to talk. Office. 9A. M. J." Eli's stomach twisted. Last night had been a revelation, a collision of everything he'd ever wanted and everything he'd been taught to fear. But James's note felt like a summons to judgment. At Pinnacle, the office buzzed with its usual chaos, designers hunched over monitors, phones ringing, deadlines looming. Eli avoided James's glass-walled office, burying himself in a project. But the memory of last night burned through every thought. What did it mean? Was James regretting it? Was Eli about to lose his job, his heart, or both? Carter. James's voice cut through the noise. Eli froze, his colleagues glancing up. My office. Now. Eli's legs felt like lead as he crossed the open-plan office. James sat behind his desk, his expression unreadable. The door clicked shut, and the silence was deafening. Last night, James began, then stopped. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare crack in his composure. Eli, I'm married. I have a life. Responsibilities. What we did, it can't happen again. Eli's heart plummeted. So that's it. You just pretend it didn't happen. James stood, rounding the desk to stand inches from Eli. You think I want to pretend? You think I haven't been tearing myself apart over you for months? His voice was raw, unguarded. But it's impossible. Then why did you come inside? Eli shot back, his voice trembling. Why did you kiss me? James's jaw tightened. Because I'm weak. Because you're... He trailed off, his eyes searching Eli's face. You're everything I shouldn't want. The words hung between them, a confession and a condemnation. Eli wanted to scream, to beg, to walk away and never look back. But he couldn't. Not when James was looking at him like that. Like he was the only thing that mattered. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Eli threw himself into his work, but every glance at James's office felt like a knife. By evening, he was exhausted, his emotions a tangled mess. He was about to leave when his phone buzzed. A text from James. Meet me at the rooftop bar. 8 p.m. Eli stared at the message, his heart pounding. He should say no. He should protect himself. But as the clock ticked closer to 8, he found himself in an Uber, heading toward the bar, toward James, toward the unknown. The rooftop was alive with city lights and soft jazz, a stark contrast to the storm in Eli's chest. James was already there, a glass of whiskey in hand, his tie loosened. He looked tired, human, and unbearably beautiful. I'm sorry, James said as Eli approached. I shouldn't have shut you out today. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Eli asked, his voice barely steady. James leaned closer, his voice low. Feel this much for someone I can't have. Eli's breath hitched. He wanted to reach out, to close the distance. But the weight of James's wedding ring glinting in the dim light held him back. What are we doing? James. He whispered. What happens now? James didn't answer. Instead, he stood, offering his hand. Let's get out of here. They left the bar in silence, the city's hum wrapping around them like a cocoon. James's hand brushed Eli's as they walked, a fleeting touch that sent sparks through Eli's veins. They ended up at a quiet park, the kind Portland was famous for, with towering pines and paths lit by soft lanterns. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and possibility. Tell me to stop, James said, his voice rough as they paused under a canopy of trees. Tell me to walk away, Eli, and I will. Eli's heart screamed to say it, to end this before it shattered him. but his lips betrayed him. "I can't," he whispered. "I don't want you to." James's eyes darkened, and before Eli could think, James was kissing him again, fierce, desperate, like a man drowning. Eli melted into it, his hands clutching James's jacket, the world fading to nothing but the heat of their bodies and the taste of whiskey on James's lips. It was reckless, wrong, but it felt like the only truth Eli had ever known. They pulled apart, breathless, foreheads pressed together. "This is going to ruin us," James murmured, but there was no conviction in his voice. "Then let it," Eli said, surprising himself with his boldness. "I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this." James laughed, a low, broken sound. "You make it sound so simple." "It is," Eli insisted, though he knew it wasn't. He'd seen the ring, the photos on James's desk, his wife, Laura, smiling at a vineyard, her blonde hair catching the sunlight. Eli had never met her, but her existence loomed like a ghost between them. They sat on a bench, the city skyline glittering in the distance. James told Eli things he'd never shared at the office, how he'd married Laura young, how their life was perfect on paper, a house in the suburbs, a successful career, plans for kids. But beneath it, James had been unraveling, questioning who he was, what he wanted. Meeting Eli had been like a match to dry tinder. "I've never done this," James admitted, staring at his hands. "I've never wanted a man before. Not like this." Eli's chest tightened. "So what am I? An experiment?" "No," James said fiercely, turning to face him. "You're the first thing that's felt real in years." The words were a lifeline, but they came with a cost. Eli knew what they were risking: James's marriage, his career, Eli's fragile sense of self. Yet, as they walked back to James's car, their fingers intertwined. Eli couldn't bring himself to care. The next week at Pinnacle was a tightrope walk. They stole glances, brushed past each other in the break room, their secret a pulse beneath every interaction. Eli's designs were sharper, bolder, fueled by the intensity of his feelings. James noticed, praising him in meetings, his professional tone masking the heat in his eyes. But the cracks were showing. Sarah, a senior designer, caught Eli staring at James during a briefing and raised an eyebrow. "Careful, kid," she muttered later. "Whitaker's married, and you're playing with fire." Eli brushed it off, but her words lingered. He started noticing things, the way James's phone lit up with Laura's name, the way he'd step out to take her calls, his voice softening in a way it never did for Eli. Doubt crept in, cold and sharp. One night, James asked Eli to stay late to finish a pitch for a major client. The office was empty, the city dark beyond the windows. They worked side by side, their laughter filling the silence. When the pitch was done, James poured them both a drink from the bottle he kept in his desk. "To us," James said, raising his glass. Eli clinked his against it, but the toast felt hollow. "What are we, James?" he asked, unable to stop himself. "What is this?" James set his glass down, his expression unreadable. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I can't stop thinking about you." Eli wanted to believe him, but the weight of reality was crushing. "And Laura, your life, You can't just walk away from that. James's silence was answer enough. They didn't kiss that night, but the tension between them was a living thing, pulling them closer even as it tore them apart. By Friday, Eli was a wreck. He'd barely slept, his dreams haunted by James's touch, Laura's face, the life he was disrupting. He was about to leave for the weekend when James called him into his office again. "I'm going to Seattle tomorrow," James said. His voice clipped. "Laura's family. I'll be gone a week." Eli nodded, his throat tight. "Have fun," he managed, hating how small he sounded. James stepped closer, his hand brushing Eli's arm. "I'll miss you," he said softly. "More than I should." Eli wanted to scream, to demand answers, but he just nodded again. As he left the office, the rain started again, mirroring the storm in his heart. He didn't know how much longer he could do this, love someone who could never fully be his. The week without James was agony. Eli threw himself into his work, sketching designs until his hands cramped. But nothing dulled the ache. He checked his phone obsessively, hoping for a text, a sign that James was thinking of him. Nothing came. Portland's gray skies mirrored Eli's mood. He wandered the city, haunting coffee shops and bookstores, trying to outrun his thoughts. At night, he lay awake, replaying their kisses, their confessions, the way James's voice cracked when he said, "You're the first thing that's felt real." But reality was Laura. Seattle. A life Eli could never touch. On Wednesday, Sarah cornered him in the break room. "You okay, Eli?" she asked, her eyes sharp. "You've been off." "I'm fine," he lied, stirring his coffee too long. She didn't buy it. "Look, I don't know what's going on with you and Whitaker, but I've seen that look before. Be careful. He's not just your boss, a married man." Eli's face burned. "There's nothing going on." Sarah raised an eyebrow, but let it drop. "Just watch yourself. Okay. You're too good to get hurt." Her words stung, but they weren't wrong. Eli was already hurting, caught in a love that felt like a fever dream. He wanted to believe James felt the same, but doubt gnawed at him. What if this was just a fling for James? A midlife crisis he'd laugh off years from now. When James returned, Eli felt the shift before he saw him. The office buzzed with his presence, crisp suit, easy smile, commanding as ever. But when their eyes met across the room, there was something new in James's gaze, guilt. "Missed you," James said later, when they were alone in his office. He reached for Eli's hand, but Eli pulled back. "Did you?" Eli asked, his voice sharp. "Or did you miss this?" He gestured between them, the air crackling with tension. James flinched. "Eli, it's not like that. I meant what I said." "You're..." "Don't." Eli cut him off. "Don't say I'm everything when you're spending your nights with her." James's face fell, and for the first time, Eli saw him look truly lost. "I don't know how to fix this," James admitted. "I'm trying to figure it out." "Figure it out faster," Eli snapped, then regretted it. He didn't want to push James away, but he couldn't keep pretending this was enough. That night, James invited Eli to dinner at a quiet restaurant on the outskirts of town. They sat in a corner booth, hidden from prying eyes. James talked about his trip, His in-laws. The facade he'd kept up. "I kept thinking about you," he said, his voice low. "Every moment I was there. I wanted to be here." Eli's heart ached, torn between hope and fear. Then why go back to her? He asked. Why keep pretending? James stared at his wine glass. "Because I don't know how to leave. Laura, she's a good person. She doesn't deserve this." "And I do." Eli's voice broke. "I didn't ask to fall for you, James. But I'm here. And I'm drowning." James reached across the table, his hand covering Eli's. "You're not alone in this. I'm drowning too." They didn't go back to Eli's apartment that night. Instead, they drove to the coast, the ocean a dark expanse under the stars. They walked along the beach, the cold biting at their skin, and talked about everything: childhoods, fears, dreams. James spoke of his father, a stern man who'd taught him to bury his emotions. Eli shared stories of his small-town life, the bullying, the shame, the freedom he'd found in Portland. As the sky lightened, James pulled Eli close. "I don't know what comes next," he said, "but I know I don't want to lose you." Eli wanted to believe him, but the ring on James's finger was a constant reminder of the life he couldn't escape. They drove back to the city in silence, the weight of their choices pressing down on them. At work, the tension grew. Whispers followed Eli colleagues noticing the late nights, the closed-door meetings. Sarah's warnings echoed in his head, but he couldn't stop. Every touch, every glance from James was a drug he couldn't quit. One evening, as they worked late again, James's phone buzzed. Laura's name flashed on the screen. James hesitated, then answered, his voice soft, placating. Eli watched, his heart sinking. When James hung up, he looked at Eli with an expression that broke him. "She knows something's wrong," James said quietly. "She's been asking questions." Eli's stomach churned. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing," James said. "But I can't keep lying to her. Or to you." Eli nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He left the office without a word, the rain blurring his vision as he walked home. He didn't know how to keep going, how to love someone who was tearing him apart. Eli stopped answering James's texts. He needed space, clarity, a chance to breathe without the weight of their secret crushing him. But the silence only amplified his longing. Every corner of Portland held a memory: a bar where they'd laughed, the park where they'd kissed, the office where their worlds had collided. At Pinnacle, Eli kept his distance, burying himself in projects. James respected his boundaries, but his eyes followed Eli, filled with a quiet desperation that made Eli's resolve waver. By the end of the week, Eli was unraveling, his emotions a tangle of love, guilt, and fear. On Friday, Sarah pulled him aside. "You look like hell," she said bluntly. "Whatever's going on, you need to deal with it before it destroys you." Eli wanted to snap at her, to tell her to mind her own business. But he couldn't. She was right. He was losing himself in this. In James. In a love that might never be his. That night, Eli went to a queer bar downtown, hoping to drown his thoughts in music and strangers. The crowd was vibrant, alive with laughter and freedom. But Eli felt like an outsider. He was nursing a beer when a man approached, tall, charming, with a smile that promised distraction. They talked, flirted, but when the man leaned in to kiss him, Eli pulled back. It wasn't right. It wasn't James. He left the bar and wandered the streets, the city's pulse mocking his own. His phone buzzed. James. Again. Can we talk? I'm outside your place. Eli's heart raced. He shouldn't go. He should let this end. But his feet carried him home, where James stood under the streetlight, rain dripping from his hair. I can't do this anymore, James said before Eli could speak. I can't keep pretending I don't love you. The word hit Eli like a thunderbolt. Love. It was the first time James had said it, and it changed everything. Then don't, Eli said, his voice shaking. Choose me. James's face crumpled. It's not that simple. Laura, she's pregnant. Eli froze, the world tilting. Pregnant. The word was a wall between them, unyielding and cold. You didn't tell me, he said, barely a whisper. I just found out, James said, his voice breaking. I don't know what to do. Eli, I love you, but I can't just. Then go. Eli cut him off, tears burning his eyes. Go be the husband she needs, the father your kid deserves. James reached for him, but Eli stepped back. Don't, he said. Just don't. James left, and Eli collapsed onto his couch, the silence deafening. He'd known this was coming, hadn't he? The ring, the calls, the life James couldn't leave. But knowing didn't dull the pain. The next day, Eli called in sick. He couldn't face James, the office, the pitying looks from Sarah. He spent the day sketching, pouring his heartbreak into his art. The drawings were raw, jagged, filled with the colors of his pain blues and grays, sharp reds, the soft gold of James's eyes. When he finally returned to work, James was different, distant, professional, his warmth replaced by a careful mask. Eli hated it, but he mirrored it, building walls to protect what was left of his heart. They worked together, but it was mechanical, their connection reduced to deadlines and emails. Weeks passed in a haze. Eli tried to move on, going on dates, throwing himself into new projects. But nothing filled the void James had left. He started looking at job postings in other cities, San Francisco, Seattle, anywhere but here. Then, one evening, James called him into his office. I'm leaving Pinnacle, James said, his voice steady but strained. I've taken a job in New York. Laura and I, we're moving. Eli's heart stopped. When? Next month, James said. I thought you should hear it from me. Eli nodded. Numb. Congratulations, he said, the word bitter on his tongue. James stepped closer, his voice dropping. I'm doing this for you, Eli, to give you a chance to move on. Bullshit, Eli snapped. You're doing this for you, to make it easier to pretend this never happened. James flinched, but he didn't deny it. I'll never forget you, he said softly. You changed me. Eli wanted to scream, to beg him to stay, but he just walked out. That night, he cried until he had nothing left. the weight of loss crushing him. Eli threw himself into his work, hoping it would save him. His designs became bolder, more daring, earning praise from clients and colleagues alike. But every compliment felt hollow. Every success a reminder of the man who'd inspired it all. James's absence was a wound that refused to heal. Portland felt smaller without him. Eli avoided the rooftop bar, the park, the places where they'd left pieces of themselves. He tried dating again, but every conversation felt like a betrayal of James, of himself. He was stuck, caught between a past he couldn't forget and a future he couldn't imagine. Sarah became his anchor, dragging him to team lunches, checking in when he got too quiet. "You're stronger than you think," she told him one day, handing him a coffee. "You'll get through this." Eli wanted to believe her, but the pain was relentless. He started therapy, something he'd never considered before. His therapist, a kind woman with a knack for cutting through his defenses, helped him untangle his feelings, guilt for loving a married man, anger at James for leaving, grief for the life they'd never have. "You're allowed to love him," she said during one session, "and you're allowed to let him go." The word stayed with Eli, a quiet permission to feel the mess of it all. He started sketching again, not for work, but for himself. The drawings were softer now, less jagged, filled with the colors of healing blues fading to greens, golds warming to pinks. One evening, as Eli walked home, he passed a community center with a flyer for an LGBTQ support group. On impulse, he went inside. The room was filled with strangers, but their stories echoed his own love, loss, the struggle to be seen. For the first time, Eli felt like he wasn't alone. He started attending regularly, finding solace in the shared vulnerability. He made friends, people who understood the weight of living authentically in a world that didn't always make space for it. One of them, Marcus, a painter with a warm laugh, became a close confidant. They spent hours talking about art, life, the courage it took to be themselves. Marcus invited Eli to an art show, where Eli's sketches were displayed alongside local artists. Standing in the gallery, watching strangers connect with his work, Eli felt a spark of pride. He wasn't healed, not completely, but he was moving forward. Then, a letter arrived. It was from James, postmarked New York. Eli's hands trembled as he opened it. The words were simple. "Raw, I'm sorry. I think about you every day. I hope you're finding your way. Jay." Eli stared at the letter, torn between burning it and framing it. He didn't reply, but he kept it, tucking it into a drawer like a piece of his past he wasn't ready to let go. Months later, Pinnacle threw a company gala. Eli almost didn't go, but Sarah insisted. The venue was stunning, all chandeliers and city views. But Eli felt out of place. He was chatting with a colleague when he saw her, Laura. She was radiant, her pregnancy glowing, her smile warm as she mingled with the team. Eli's heart stopped. She didn't know him, didn't know what he'd been to her husband, but her presence felt like a reckoning. He slipped outside, needing air. The city sparkled below, indifferent to his turmoil. He was about to leave when Laura approached him, her expression kind but curious. "You're Eli, right?" she said. "James always spoke highly of your work." Eli nodded, his throat tight. "He's a good boss," he managed. the lie bitter. Laura smiled, oblivious to the weight of her words. He's a good man. He's been different since we moved. Happier, I think. Eli forced a smile, his heart breaking all over again. He excused himself, fleeing to the safety of the night. As he walked home, he realized something. James had made his choice, and Eli had to make his. He started applying for jobs again, this time with purpose. He wanted a fresh start, somewhere he could be himself without the ghost of James haunting him. When an offer came from a small studio in San Francisco, he didn't hesitate. Portland had been his escape, but it was time to move on. San Francisco was a whirlwind of color and chaos, a city that felt alive in a way Portland never had. Eli's new job at Horizon Studio was demanding but exhilarating. His colleagues a vibrant mix of dreamers and doers. He rented a tiny apartment in the Mission District, its walls soon covered with sketches that told the story of his healing. But James lingered in the quiet moments when Eli sipped coffee in a crowded cafe, when he sketched late into the night, when the city's fog wrapped around him like a memory. He didn't hate James anymore. He missed him. But the ache was softer now, less like a wound and more like a bruise. Eli threw himself into his new life. He joined a local art collective, where he met people who challenged him to push his boundaries. He dated, cautiously at first, then with more openness. There was Leo, a musician with a quick wit, and Sam, a writer who made Eli laugh until his sides hurt. None of them were James, but that was okay. Eli was learning to love himself first. The support group had taught him that self-love as an act of defiance, of survival. He carried that lesson into his work, his art, his friendships. Marcus visited from Portland, and they spent a weekend exploring the city, laughing over bad street food and late-night gallery openings. "You're different," Marcus said, grinning. "Lighter." Eli smiled. "I'm trying." One day, a package arrived at his apartment. Inside was a sketchbook, its pages filled with James's handwriting and drawings rough, unpolished, but unmistakably his. A note was tucked inside. "I started this after I left. It's not much, but it's for you. Jay." Eli flipped through the pages, his heart racing. The sketches were of moments they'd share: the rooftop bar, the beach, Eli's apartment. The words were confessions, regrets, a map of James's heart. It was beautiful and painful, a reminder of what they'd had and what they'd lost. Eli didn't cry this time. He set the sketchbook on his shelf, a piece of his past he could honor without letting it define him. He wrote James a letter not to send, but to release. "Thank you for showing me what love feels like. I hope you're finding your way too." San Francisco became his home. He built a life there, one filled with art, friends, and the quiet strength of knowing who he was. He still thought of James, but the memories were softer now, less sharp. He was proud of himself not for loving James, but for surviving him. One evening, at a gallery opening, Eli's work was the centerpiece. His sketches told a story of love and loss, resilience and hope. The crowd loved it, their praise washing over him like a tide. Marcus was there, along with Leo and Sam, their presence a reminder of the family he'd found. As he stood in the gallery, watching strangers connect with his art, Eli felt a weight lift. He wasn't defined by his pain anymore. He was Eli Carter, artist, friend, survivor, and he was enough. But life, as always, had one more surprise. A week later, Eli got an email from James. It was short. Professional, I'm in San Francisco for a conference. Can we meet? Just to talk. Eli stared at the screen, his heart pounding. He didn't know if he was ready, if he could face James without falling apart. But he typed a reply, coffee. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. The usual place. The usual place was a cafe they'd never been to together. But it felt right in neutral ground. A new start. Eli spent the night wrestling with his emotions, torn between hope and fear. What did James want? Closure. A second chance. Did Eli even want to know? He arrived early, claiming a corner table. The cafe was bustling, filled with the clink of cups and the hum of conversation. Eli sipped his coffee, his nerves jangling. When James walked in, Eli's breath caught. He looked older, tired, but still impossibly handsome, his gray eyes searching the room until they found Eli. "Hi," James said, sliding into the seat across from him. "You look good." Eli smiled, cautious. "So do you?" They talked, haltingly at first, then with more ease. James told him about New York, his new job, his daughter, born 3 months ago. "She's beautiful," he said, his voice soft. "But I'm still figuring out how to be her dad." Eli nodded, his heart aching but steady. "You'll get there." The coffee grew cold as they talked, the years and miles between them shrinking with every word. James's voice was softer now, less guarded, but Eli could still feel the weight of everything unsaid. The cafe buzzed around them, a backdrop to the quiet intensity of their reunion. "I messed up, Eli," James said finally, his eyes fixed on his hands. "I hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself for that." Eli's throat tightened. "You hurt yourself too," he said. "You were trying to be someone you're not." James looked up, his gaze raw. "I'm still trying to figure out who I am. Laura and I were separated. It's not just about you, though you were the catalyst. I couldn't keep lying to her, to myself." Eli's heart skipped. Separated. The word opened a door he'd thought was locked forever, but he didn't know if he wanted to walk through it. "What does that mean for you?" he asked. James shrugged, a tired smile tugging at his lips. "It means I'm starting over. New York. New job. New everything. I'm trying to be honest for once." Eli wanted to ask more what happened. Why now? What it meant for them, but he held back. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about James finding his truth, just as Eli had found his. They talked until the cafe emptied, the conversation shifting to lighter things: Eli's art, James's daughter, the chaos of San Francisco. It felt like a truce, a moment of peace in the storm of their past. When they parted, James hugged him, a brief, fierce embrace that said more than words could. "Take care of yourself, Eli," James said, his voice thick. "You deserve everything." "So do you," Eli replied, meaning it. He watched James walk away, the city swallowing him up. For the first time, Eli didn't feel broken. He felt whole. like he'd reclaimed a piece of himself he'd given to James. The next months were a blur of growth. Eli's art career flourished. His work featured in galleries across the West Coast. He spoke at a local LGBTQ event, sharing his story of love and loss, resilience and hope. The crowd's applause was a balm, a reminder that his pain had meaning, that it had shaped him into someone stronger. Marcus became a constant in his life, their friendship deepening into something steady, grounding. They didn't date, Eli wasn't ready, and Marcus respected that, but their bond was a lifeline. Eli started mentoring younger artists at the collective, passing on the lessons he'd learned, that love could hurt, but it could also heal. One evening, as Eli worked on a new Paisea vibrant mural of a city skyline, its colors bleeding into each other like emotion, she got a call from Sarah. "You're killing it out there," she said, her voice warm. "Pinnacle's not the same without you." Eli laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in years. "Tell everyone I said hi." He hung up, his eyes drifting to the sketchbook James had sent. He hadn't opened it in months, but tonight, he did. The pages were a time capsule, a reminder of a love that had changed him. He didn't need to carry it anymore, but he was grateful for it. Eli's life wasn't perfect. There were still nights when he woke with James's name on his lips, still moments when doubt crept in. But he was building something new, a life rooted in authenticity, in art, in the people who saw him for who he was. As winter settled over San Francisco, Eli got another email from James. It was a photo of his daughter, smiling in a tiny knit hat, with a note. "Her name's Lily. Thought you'd like to see her. Jay." Eli smiled, his heart full. He didn't reply, but he saved the photo, a small piece of James's new life. He was happy for him, truly, and he was happy for himself. The city sparkled outside his window, alive with possibility. Eli picked up his sketchbook, a blank page waiting. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to find out. Spring arrived in San Francisco, painting the city in blooms and sunlight. Eli's life had found a rhythm: mornings at the studio, evenings with friends, weekends filled with art and laughter. He was no longer the scared kid from Oregon, hiding his truth. He was Eli Carter, unapologetically himself, and that felt like a victory. His murals were everywhere now, splashed across buildings in the Mission, telling stories of love, struggle, and triumph. Each stroke of paint was a piece of his journey, a testament to the boy who'd loved too fiercely and survived. The city embraced him, and he embraced it back. Marcus was still his rock, their friendship a constant in the chaos. They spent a weekend hiking in Marin, the ocean stretching endless below them. "You ever think about him?" Marcus asked as they sat on a cliff, the wind tugging at their clothes. "Sometimes," Eli admitted. "But it's different now. It's not about pain anymore. It's gratitude." Marcus nodded, his eyes warm. "You're kind of incredible. You know that." Eli laughed, shoving him playfully. "You're not so bad yourself." Back in the city, Eli's work caught the eye of a curator from a major gallery. They offered him a solo show, a chance to tell his story on a bigger stage. Eli poured himself into it, creating pieces that were raw, honest, and achingly beautiful. The show, titled Behind the Door, was a love letter to his past, to James, to the person he'd become. The opening night was electric. The gallery was packed, the air humming with excitement. Eli stood by his favorite Paisea canvas of two figures under a streetlight, their shadows blending into one. It wasn't just about him and James. It was about every love that defied the rules, every heart that dared to feel. Marcus was there, along with Leo, Sam, and a dozen others who'd become his family. Sarah flew in from Portland, her hug fierce and proud. "You did it, kid," she whispered. "You made it." As the night wound down, Eli stepped outside, the city alive around him. He felt full not just of love, but of purpose. He'd taken the broken pieces of his heart and built something beautiful, something lasting. A year later, Eli got a package from New York. It was a small painting, and signed but unmistakably James's work, a simple scene of a porch. A door ajar, light spilling out. A note was tucked inside. "I'm proud of you. Always will be. Jay." Eli smiled, his heart steady. He hung the painting in his studio, a quiet nod to the man who'd changed him. James was part of his story, but not the whole of it. Eli's life was his own now, shaped by his choices, his courage, his art. He thought about the night James drove him home, the door that opened to a love that broke every rule. It had been reckless, painful, transformative. It had taught him that love wasn't about possession or perfection, it was about truth, about the bravery to feel deeply, even when it hurt. Eli's show traveled to other cities, his story resonating with strangers who saw their own struggles in his art. He spoke at more events, sharing his journey with kids like the one he'd been scared, hiding, desperate to be seen. He told them they were enough, that their love was valid, that their pain could become their strength. As he stood on a stage in Los Angeles, looking out at a sea of faces, Eli felt a quiet peace. He didn't have all the answers. He didn't need them. He had his art, his friends, his truth. And that was more than enough. The world kept turning, and Eli kept moving forward. One sketch, one story, one brave step at a time. Behind every door was a new beginning, and he was ready to walk through.